I feel pretty good now, actually. So the economy actually is in pretty good shape. Travel's doing pretty well by the looks of it. Entertainment is booming, never been better, I think, Owen. VUCA is just a fancy way of saying that change is a constant, so let's just get on with it. I agree. And Damien's shoes, gold and black, did you see them? Very good indeed. So I told you we'd entertain. So thanks very much, panel. That was really informative, and I think a great way to start off our afternoon. So our next speaker, and we're getting right into the individual presentations now, is our very own Anna Jorysz. She's Display Performance Manager at NMPi. And I know Anna is passionate about taking a measured approach to data. You can see her picture to your left and to your right. And if I click this green button, I think we'll have it up here as well. So Anna, if you'd like to come along to the stage, and we'll welcome you. Oh, thank you very much. There you go. Green, all yours.
So I'm going to follow up a panel of lots of original ideas with an idea that is maybe a little less original. And I'm sure you've seen this slide all over the place. Data is the new oil. It's a phrase that's been used and abused, I think, a lot in the last few years. Without getting into the political overtones of it all, I think in marketing terms, it's become a call to just use all the data. You've got lots of data, use it. And I think that's great in principle, I wouldn't disagree. But actually what that leads to can be paralysis when you don't know where to start, or ineffective strategies where you throw it all at it and just see what sticks. And it's worth revisiting where this phrase actually originally came from. It was coined, we think, by a guy called Clive Humby back in 2006. So it's actually not that new a phrase. And the point he was making was actually about how you use that data and make it effective. He said, data is the new oil. It's valuable, but if unrefined, it cannot really be used. It has to be changed into gas, plastic, chemicals, etc., to create a valuable entity that drives profitable activity. So must data be broken down and analysed for it to have value. And I think what strikes me most about this is actually how directly those three concepts, value, profitability, and analysis, really map across to what I would call the ideals of performance marketing. Performance marketing isn't simply the poorer cousin of brand marketing. It's an approach, maybe even a philosophy, which is built very much on those principles. Firstly, it's about assigning value to an action under whatever circumstances are relevant, sale, lead, click, and working out how much that's worth to you. It's then about driving profit. It's about bringing in that value to your business in as cost-efficient a way as possible. But also then, most importantly, it's about taking that margin and reinvesting it to really drive growth. And then it's about ongoing analysis. It's all about ongoing optimization, learning from it, improving, and being able to react to change as it comes along. And of course, you have to do all of this as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And this is something that at NMPi we do have a lot of experience of. We work with a lot of our clients on what we call a pure performance model. So we put up the media spend ourselves, we are paid only on results. And what that means is, yes, innovation is integral to how we approach our campaigns. We're always looking to try those new things. But we've also learned that we have to make that back out into true, proper performance gains. There's no point being seduced by a nice, flashy idea if it doesn't work. Or even worse, if you don't even know if it worked or not. And I think this is something that very much applies to the new frontiers of integrating data into your campaigns. And there's two kind of areas that applies. The first is in your creative and your messaging. So that's your personalization, making dynamic ads, and also the integrating of live data into your campaigns. And the second is your buying and your targeting, your bidding strategies, your audience segmentation. And when you're approaching your strategies and planning, I think there's 4 key questions that you need to ask here. Firstly, what are you trying to achieve? Why do you think the data use will actually help you achieve this? How will you measure your success? How will you know it worked? And how will you continue to optimize further once you've got the initial plan in place? So to put this kind of into practice, I want to start with an example. And those who know me will know that I love to talk about Liverpool. So around this time last year, they were coming to the end of a very successful season. Yes, their position in the top 4 wasn't quite certain yet, but it'd been record-breaking in terms of kit sales. But this meant that they had really big targets for next year, and they wanted us to come up with a way to sell even more than they had done the previous year. And given that this talk is all about data, maybe you're expecting me to talk about how we went away. We did some analysis, we looked at the opportunities, And we came up with a strategy in the back of that. But if I'm completely honest, what happened is I got excited and I came up with 2 cool ideas. And I think it's important actually to be honest about this, because a data-led strategy should never come at the exclusion of being creative and with coming up with those big ideas. So the first idea was this. What if we could allow users to actually personalize their kits within the banner themselves and add it straight to their basket? And secondly, what if, having given them those options, they didn't actually even need to use it because we'd already predicted what they wanted? I got quite excited. But of course, we did have to go back and do our due diligence. Building these ads, building the data integration, it's not a trivial thing. Time, resource. Did we think that would actually work, or was it just a hunch? So that comes back to our questions. What were we trying to achieve? Well, obviously we were trying to achieve sales. But more importantly, we were trying to achieve it by engaging people with our ads, bringing them, making it as easy as possible for them to buy. And why did we think the data would help? Why would the relevance help? So we went back, we did our due diligence. We looked at the performance of the similar functionality on site, how common it was to buy personalized shirts, and did we think this would be effective? And we were pretty confident that it would be. And this is what we came up with. So firstly, we built a ranking system for all the players based on their current form in the Premier League. We know that, as a general rule, current form is quite a good marker for popularity. We then looked at players that would be of particular interest to the customer. So we looked at their search history, who had they shown particular interest in, and we also knew what they'd been looking at on site, what current products were of particular interest to them. And this started kind of prioritizing. But then we then knew that relevance is really important to get the attention. So we said, well, let's look at the content that the ad is showing next to. Is it about a particular player? And if so, let's prioritize that player. And finally, we wanted to ensure that there was a continuous user experience across these ads. We wanted them to be really useful. So if someone had already had already interacted with the ad, we wanted to make sure that the next ad would pick up exactly where they left off. So whoever that player was, we would show that to them. And we were fairly confident this would work, but we weren't sure. So we had to go back to those questions again. How would we measure the success? And how would we continue to optimize? Because to mix up my sporting references slightly, it's all about the aggregation of marginal gains. And so we went away and we set up a trial. We ran it against some randomly selected ads, so where there was no data input at all, and we looked to see how it worked. And given the fact that I've chosen to talk to you about it today, it might not surprise you to find out that it was really successful. We saw clicks and interactions both increased significantly, so people interacting with the ads and those who actually went through. And as a result of all that traffic, we were able to smash targets. And best of all, by being able to demonstrate the results, we brought home the first silverware of the season for Liverpool. As they have discovered in recent years, the idea of beautiful football alone isn't always enough to win you trophies. Sometimes you have to be pragmatic, dig in, and really get those results out. What about then if we look at the buying side of things? So while we're with football, we might as well stick with it. What if we're trying to sell this shirt? Our best approach to shopping that we have found so far, within the parameters of what Google allows, is to structure our accounts in such a way that we can bid not just on individual products, but also at a query level as well. And given that's the case and we are able to do that, it makes sense that the more data you have, the more efficient you can be in deciding those bids. So what do we know about this product? Well, it's kit. More precisely, it's a home kit, it's for women, and it's got Salah on the back. And what about in terms of performance metrics? Perhaps it's got about roughly an average conversion rate, but a high click-through rate. But it is actually a top-selling women's product, and it gets a lot more clicks from women than it does from men. And then what about the impact that the name Salah has on the back? Well, we know he's really popular, but Salah's not exactly been at his most prolific right now. So how does all of that impact? And more particularly, if we're using Google Merchant Center, how do we fit it into those constraints? We're only allowed 5 custom labels, 1 value per product on each of those, and only 1,000 unique values that might sound like a lot, but quickly runs out. And that's before you even start to think about everything you know about the query and the user who searched for it. How on earth do you actually make that in an impactful way? And perhaps Google is actually doing us a favor with those limitations, because it makes us really knuckle down and focus on what will make that real impact. And we do that by first building a model based on our existing data, working out what the real things that are really impacting performance are. And then we define a meaningful categorization system, grouping products in a way that will allow them to generate the most impact. And as ever, we set up our reporting so that we can learn and build a feedback loop back in. So on a very simple level, that might mean grouping all your metrics that you've got. Think on-site performance, cross-channel performance, all the product data, and just simply looking what are the 5 things that make the most difference to overall performance. And anyone can do that. You can do that in Excel. Or you can be more sophisticated. You can start looking at the relationships between these metrics, their combined influence, and then define some single metric as a function of all this, what you might call a performance coefficient, which you can then feed into your bidding strategies. And then once you've got that, you can start looking at how you tailor that, maybe for different demographics, for different external factors. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking this sounds an awful lot like machine learning. And well, yes, there's a reason machine learning is so successful. But I think, what I have hopefully demonstrated is that machine learning is just one end of a spectrum that starts with really good data practice with those basic principles. Absolutely, if you have access to the resource and the expertise, I would always advocate for you to use it. But it's important to remember that machine learning, if it's not based on solid foundations, is liable to go a bit off piste. You have to really understand how you're setting it up. And if you don't have machine learning available to you, the same principles apply, and it's a great point to demonstrate what you can really do with your data. So those good principles, if I had to sum them up just to finish off, I would say firstly it's to measure. Make sure you're always starting from the data. You have a good chance of it working. Secondly, be measured. Don't throw the kitchen sink at what you're doing. Think about it. Start from a point that you know will work, optimize from there, and build it up. And third, measure again. Make sure you know what's working, you know what's not working, and you keep feeding that back. And while you're doing all that, don't forget to be creative. Thank you.
Well done, Anna. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. There's a couple of questions before you dash off. There's one, but if you do have questions, it's slido, sli.do, NMPignite. So put your questions on there, and I'll put them to Anna. There's somebody who's there's 2 questions on here. The first one is, football is inherently a VUCA thing, right? How much impact does the team or the player performance have on the sales performance online?
It depends. It both has a significant impact and less than you think as well. I think on a macro level, absolutely. If the team's doing well, if it's got a really good feeling about it, I think that's certainly the case with Liverpool at the moment, then you do see that success. And we have done analysis looking at the impact of individual matches, and sometimes you see that there as well. If it's a match that really makes a difference to the position, if it's a match that puts them in a Champions League winning position, for instance, that has an absolutely significant effect. Then you have other matches that don't have that much impact. So it's a case of looking at across, get a whole season's worth of data, look at those trends across. What actually is it about those results that drives the performance, and how do we leverage that?
Good, thank you. Now, I've got one other question, but please do put them through, or put your hand up, and Lisa will bring the mic around. So if you do have a question, raise your hand, and we'll take the mic. I think I might know who put this one up, and it hasn't been approved, but I'm going to say it anyway. Who do you fear more, or what do you fear more? Pogba, Salah, or VUCA?
I would like to say at this point, I'm not really a football fan.
You're not a football
So it does not impact my life at all. So I'll have to say VUCA.
VUCA, very good. One's just come in. Where is the data coming from? Where is the data?
In the example I talked about, yeah. It's a combination of sources. So the performance data is coming from fantasy football league data that is used for all the sort of information you get there, which we've just leveraged and we've turned into something that's usable for us.
How do you access that data?
Via an API. So we've built a tool that takes it from an API, regularly updates it, builds it into a feed, which goes into our dynamic creative. So that then turns it into a weighting that determines how frequently each player is shown. The search data we get from third-party sources. We obviously have our own first-party data on site. And the contextual, again, is a feature of the DSPs that we work with.
Very good. I'm not sure this is a question, and it hasn't been approved, but I'm going to say it again. From Maz. Where's Maz? Thank you. Many years ago, I heard the phrase, if you're standing still, you're moving backwards. Sounds similar to the phrase that I put up earlier. This was used to describe the progress of Premiership football. Any comment?
No comment.
There's no question mark there. From Gareth Neville. Gareth Neville's in the crowd. What data partners do you use?
So we work a lot with Google. So DV360 provides a lot of data within there that we use. We also leverage various other DSPs for sources where that's available. We tend to pick it on a process of whatever fits the bill for that time. And we're always willing to look around and see what's out there. I think we don't have a particular preference.
Very good. I've just seen the clapperboard at the back. So there's one more question. Please find Anna at the break and she'll happily answer that question for you if it's yours. Thanks very much, Anna.